How to create tileable textures for use in 3D applications like Blender. Hi guys, in today's video we'll be creating tileable textures, in particular this texture which I downloaded from the internet for free. I'll be showing you how to make it tileable from scratch to avoid having to spend money going to websites that charge you to get tileable high quality textures. So let's get right to it. Currently I have this box that represents a brick wall. Going to image, open, and then browse for my brick texture. In our UV editor, we can see the brick wall that we've just selected. All I need to do is to go to viewport shading, and I need to also include it as a texture image. From here, open and then browse to it. We can see these lines that look like they are seam lines, and that's where our brick texture ends and repeats. The idea of creating tileable textures is to take out the appearance of this seam and make it look like a contiguous image even though it's actually repeating. And that's what I'll be demonstrating today using Krita. So here I am at Krita, a free open source software that has some of the features of Photoshop. I'll be using this software to tile my brick. To do that, I'll just click on New Image, select any of the templates. In this case, I'll just select a custom document and create. I don't care about the size for now because I can always resize my canvas from within Krita. I'll click on Open to open the image in question, and watch that it has resized my canvas to the resolution of the image that I imported. I'll have to resize the canvas to exactly 1K, which is 1024 by 1024. I don't care about the offset for now. I click OK. So if I select my move tool, I can see that my image is within the canvas, just basically placed within the canvas, and I can move it to any location I want. Now, considering I want to tile it, I want to be as careful in placing it such that for this brick, I am just in between blocks, the vertical and horizontal. It doesn't matter that much, but it could actually ease our work for us. So once I have the canvas resized and my image fully embedded within, observe that my image is slightly bigger than my canvas. I can now select the crop tool and select as much of my image as possible. Let me go close. It has a little bit of a snapping function, and I can just hit crop. So now my image is cropped within the canvas and it's just sized appropriately. The next step I'll use is go back to image, resize the canvas and double the size. I can just hit ×2 for the width and same for the height. And for my offset, I'll select 0 for the X and Y and OK. So I have my image making a quarter of my canvas. The next step I'll take is to duplicate my image by Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, placing it at the other ends of the canvas. I can use the arrow to do that by hitting Shift for big moves and just moving it for smaller moves. I want to make sure that I have it just at the edge. When I'm satisfied, I can select the two layers and merge them. I repeat the same action. Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, Shift down, As I approach the end, just slightly nudge it to the end. And then merge layers as before. While looking at the image, you can see the seams just ever so slightly. Now luckily we picked an image where the seam action is just barely visible, and that makes our job easier. With the clone brush selected, just ensuring that we have the clone brush. Again, you type in clone, have it selected. You can resize the brush. We want ideally to keep the brush just about the size of each block, and that's the case in my own. To change the size of the brush, I'll hold down the shift key and drag upwards or downwards to increase or reduce it. Next, I will sample an area. So I'm going to start from the top. I want to sample this general area, and I can do that by holding down Control to sample it. You can see there's a secondary brush created in that area that I can use to sample and just lightly, of course, I'll ensure that my layer is selected and lightly tap until I basically get a blend of what I'm looking for. So I'll repeat this action for the different areas. Of course, the plan is to just continue to the continuity between blocks. So I'm going to make this one block one big continuous block, or appear to be one big continuous block. Again, sample and then tap until I have what I need. Of course, these areas might need to be sampled as well, so I'll just Control sample and blend. Sample, blend. I can hit it multiple times to blend, but making sure I don't overdo it. So I'm going to pick one of these, either this yellow or white area. I'd rather have the white area since that's the majority of the bricks. Sample and then tap, taking care not to overdo it. Sample, tap, maybe one more tap will do, because in this area it seems like there's almost no difference. So sample, tap once, maybe undo that, sample, tap, sample, tap, sample, tap, and I'll just continue that for every area that seems to have that seam line very visible. I could of course sample 2 areas if I'm not comfortable with just one area, and I'll just leave this in time lapse while I complete the rest of the images. So at the end of this, we have what looks pretty seamless. Now that we do, I can just resize my canvas to pick out just one of the four and split it into a quarter like the original image. So I'll just go to image, resize canvas, and divide by 2. Offset 0. So I pick out the top left corner. And here I have it. My image redone as tileable. So once I'm done with that and back in Blender, after saving the image, I can just pick the image I've saved. I saved it as a JPEG image. I can pick the image I've saved, and if I tab into edit mode, you can see that basically it's not tiled, or at least it appears to flow properly. But then one thing that you may notice is if I tab into edit mode, I'm just going to scale this up in a bit. This is what I see. Repetition. It's obvious repetition. So how can I get rid of this? Introduction to blending in Blender. Before I do that, I'll just go into Data tab. Under UVs, I'll add another UV map. And then I'll just add 2 UV maps to my shader editor. Just select this, pass this to this, select the first one, get another one, and ensure that the second UV map is selected. I'm going to use a noise shader for this. That's a texture noise shader, and then I'm going to plug in. First, I'll plug in the noise so that you see what it looks like. I'm also going to plug in this UV into the vector area, and you see the level of noise it contains. I want to use a different UV map for this so that it's not so noisy. I could turn down all that here, but I want to give myself that extra room in case I decide to use a different type of texture. And with the UV map 2 selected as here, I'll tab into edit mode, Control A, and then scale this down. Like really scale it down. Okay, I think I just want it completely contained. I'll scale it down, X-axis. Yeah. There we go. Now I'm changing this from, I don't want this to be colored. I want it just black and white. And we'll see why in a moment. Just going to grab this and push it all the way here. I'm going to add a mix shader. Search for mix. And then ensure it's a color. Plug this to the top. Plug the result to the other place. And then what you will observe is basically this is mixing the texture with this gray color. I'm going to give it a different color so it's more obvious. And that's what it looks like when you mix the texture with a kind of brownish color. I'm going to make it a little darker. But rather than just mix this, which, I mean, that doesn't solve my problem. It still looks fairly tiled. I want to ensure that the factor, which determines how much of the top texture versus the color, is shown. If I drop this down, you see that more of the top texture shows. And if I go up above halfway, you see more of the bottom texture shows. Right? So rather than use that, I could use kind of like my noise texture as that factor, where the blacker area means more up from the bottom and the lighter area means more from the top. So I can push the factor up into the factor slot. And here we have it. That breakup is completely gone. Of course, I can play around with my settings a little more to give it a little bit more realism. Go to object mode so that we can see it in its grandeur. Okay, so that does it for this video. I hope you learned something. We basically took a regular texture gotten straight from the internet and tiled it. We could have gone into adding bump maps, normal maps, but I'll leave that for another video. For now, please remember to like, leave your comment, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. And see you in the next one. Bye bye.